Tune in weekly and listen to the Collateral Damage podcast, where Michael Wilson and Maureen Cavanaugh host a variety of special guests to discuss topics and available services that will help you learn about the impact that substance use has on our lives, our families, and on our communities nationwide. Episodes and listening information can be found at www.cdpodcast.com. You can also search for Collateral Damage Podcast on your favorite listening platforms or watch previous and future episodes on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe and share. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Collateral Damage. I am Mike Wilson.
And I am Maureen Cavanaugh from my home.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are. We got a little insight into your home instead of your office.
Yep.
And I'm also in my home, in my hoodie.
You should introduce
appropriately
Caesar.
Dressed. What's that?
You should introduce Caesar.
Caesar, right here is my bearded dragon. He's joining us today as a special guest. We'll interview him later in the show, see if he has anything to add. He's just listening intently in the background right now.
He really looks like he is.
And listen, I do a lot of my work for Bay State Recovery Services here in this office, and this poor guy, I mean, you think you've got it bad. He has to sit and listen to all of it. And he can't even add his 2 cents. He's just back there shaking his head. You know, it's tough. So.
It's tough.
But so we are coming to you from our homes, quarantined, right? You're quarantined.
Social distancing.
Well, so now they're calling it physical distancing, right? Because social distancing implies that you're supposed to stay away from people, and it's not that. You're supposed to stay away from them physically.
Right, because they called it social distancing, and everybody started flipping out because they weren't talking to anybody, and now they're calling it physical distancing.
Yes, so physical distancing, we're physically distancing ourselves from people, and I got to tell you, you know, for me personally, this is hard. I have my mom living with me. She's 70, and she has COPD, recently diagnosed COPD. So she's one of those high risk individuals. So I have to take extra precaution, and you know, it's limiting, right? I think if I was just a 40-year-old guy living at home with Caesar, I wouldn't have to take as many precautions, but I do.
Being careful, yeah. Did you do anything for Easter yesterday?
If by do anything, do you mean did I get up? Yes.
No, I mean, was there? It was like a normal. It wasn't like a normal Easter. No, not here either.
Well, how can you have a normal Easter unless you happen to live with the family that you want to spend time with? Because otherwise, it's an unnecessary risk, you know, to bring all these people together and share a holiday and enjoy time together and cook meals. So, I mean, I have a special diet, so I didn't even eat Easter dinner, but my mom made one for herself, and we said hi and said Happy Easter.
It's so weird, isn't it? It's like, even if you didn't care all that much about Easter or whatever holiday, Passover that you normally celebrate, it felt weird not to, I don't know.
It felt like a Sunday.
Yeah, it felt like the whole thing felt weird. We cooked, and my daughter came over, but because I've been around her a lot anyhow, so we figured what's one more time. But I delivered to my other 2 kids dinner.
Yeah.
And I didn't even get out of the car.
Right.
We just handed it to them out the window.
Yep. Put it on a tray, hand it out so you don't touch anybody.
It's so weird.
It is.
My youngest son is actually working in the COVID unit at Mass General. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's like a little ticking time bomb. No.
He's front line right now.
Yeah, he's afraid to go near me. So.
I mean, this is unprecedented. You know, we got no.
Or so he told me.
We have no real experience, this generation or any, you know, of the previous generations, anyone that's alive, I would say at this point. I'm sure there's a couple people that were alive back in the, you know, early 1900s with the flu lockdown, but, you know, nobody alive right now has experienced this and knows how to respond to it. And, you know, certainly not those that were, you know, prior to COVID-19 were actively facing a loved one's addiction, you know, because that hasn't changed anything. I mean, if nothing else, the social distancing, physical distancing, isolation, you know, the added stress and anxiety of what the world is going through right now is it's probably creating or exacerbating previous addiction issues, right? I mean,
I know I'm hearing from a lot of parents, and they don't know what to do. So they want to enforce their boundaries and their rules, but that means, you know, maybe asking their son or daughter to leave, and they're afraid to do that.
It's like against the law right now to
Right,
to
right,
go out and just be out there.
right. So they're afraid to do that, and I don't know, it's very scary. It really is very scary. And I know in Massachusetts, at least, there's a real problem as far as the sober houses trying to keep the lights on in some cases. I mean,
Mhm,
we've been doing lots of things to get them to apply for assistance. And thankfully, people aren't getting it. I haven't seen anybody get evicted, but we've had a lot of pleas for help
mhm,
because people can't pay their rent, and a lot of there's a lot of sober houses that were doing really well for a long time, and
right,
they'll be fine. But there's also a lot of sober houses that are renting, and they've got to pay their rent too, and
mhm,
the electricity. So when you have a working house full of a bunch of guys or girls that are no longer working and unemployment hasn't come in yet,
mhm,
they're in trouble too. So this is hard for so many reasons. Every time I go to complain myself, I look around and I'm like, well, you know what? I really don't have anything to complain about. I can
right.
sit on the couch and read a book or watch
Complaining from
Netflix.
the comfort of your own home,
Yeah, there's
sipping
no telethon
coffee,
for me.
yeah,
Yeah.
watching Netflix. Yeah,
Yeah.
it affects everybody, and I think that, we're still, if I'm not mistaken, I don't know when you're listening to this, but right now, this week, the, April 10th to the April 20th, that chunk of time they're saying is supposed to be, the worst. I mean, projection wise,
Mhm.
where the most cases are brought up, recognized. I mean, America's already, got more cases than anyone else in the world.
Yeah.
And so this 10-day period they say is supposed to be, the worst of it. And governors and, everybody are looking at extended lockdowns.
Yep.
Schools are closing for the year. And I think that there's a lot of young adults and kids who are really confused about what's going to happen. I mean, we're looking at this and talking about it as adults, and people who are working and what they're going to do, and unemployment and all that other stuff.
Right.
And then you've got this kind of forgotten group, these young adults, the 18 to 22, 24, 25 year olds who were graduating, going to college, in college, and were had a trajectory, whatever it might be, to graduate, to get a degree, to get a job, to move on. These are people building a life,
Yeah.
and
Can
their
you imagine?
lives.
And the economy was so strong, and everybody was thinking about what their job would be, and
Mhm,
now everything is stopped.
right. I mean,
So
I'm
it's
dealing personally with a lot of parents who have young adults at home that, they were in a launching position. I don't know if they were actually launching, but they were in a launching position, preparing to launch into whatever their life was going to be. And, the hope within the family system was that that launch would get them out of addiction, right? That part of it would be getting treatment and then launching into some sort of a career or some sort of path that would give them, a better trajectory. And that just doesn't exist right now. So there's a
right.
lot of holding pattern.
Everything is
Um,
very uncertain. And that whole feeling of the world turning upside down is not good for recovery.
Well, not if you have a life issue like addiction, not if you have
Right.
a life problem where you don't know how to cope already. And then, the world is starting to deteriorate around you, and you know, you're not able to cope with normal everyday stuff during an up economy. You're definitely not going to be able to cope as things are falling apart. So you're going to lean on what you've been leaning on, even more so.
Have you participated or watched any of these online meetings?
I did participate in one, and when I say participated, I sat in and
Hmm.
watched because we had to sample some of them for the guys at the house, because our sober house, obviously the guys can't leave the house, and we need them to have access to meetings. So I sat in and sampled one, and it was being held by a program down in Vermont, and there must have been 150 people on it.
Yeah.
And it was interesting, and it was just like any other meeting. There were some people holding it hostage, there were some people really wanting help, and there were some people that were just confused about how to use their mic and camera. It was interesting. um, but
Yeah,
I.
at least there's that, right? There's been a lot of them. I know the Heron Foundation has had a lot of them.
Mhm,
And I've been posting them whenever I could to try to get the word out. I think
Mhm.
everybody pretty much knows now how to use Zoom, and that there's meetings out there. And Magnolia's been having family meetings as
Right.
well, and I know a bunch of other places have too, but it's still, it's still
Well, I
hard.
mean, this may be leading us to connect with more people, you know? I mean, we had all these isolated little groups, you know, across the country where they
Mhm.
were kind of culty. You know, it was, well, this group does it this way and that group does it this way. I mean, this creates a new opportunity for all those groups to mix and mingle and for more people to talk. And, you know, I think that for those that might have been initially afraid to go to a meeting, right? Going to a meeting is a big deal if you've
Right.
never been to one, or
I
going to a
agree.
meeting is a big deal if you don't want to leave your house because you don't like yourself. You
Right.
don't want to see people. But, you know, now this is forcing a platform where people can participate with a hoodie on
Right.
in their room. They can turn off the camera, they can just listen, nobody has to see them, and they can still get the message. So I mean,
Right.
as uncomfortable as this situation is, it is definitely opening up room for people to engage in services that they might not otherwise engage in.
Yeah, so that's the upside, right?
They call me
Definitely.
Mr. Silver Lining.
I know, that's what I call you all the time.
Yeah. My girlfriend hates it, by the way, so do my kids. But
But it's good, you have to think like that.
well, that's how I get through every day with a smile, even when things are
Right.
falling apart. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So
So
parenting during this must be tough. I mean, forget about just like your average parents dealing with, you know, young children being stuck in the house and not being able to like drop them off at school or daycare and getting a moment for yourself, but like parenting an addicted loved one.
right, because it's all those boundaries and rules that will help them
Hmm.
if they're gonna be in your house, right? And, even when they're not in your house, right? That whole get a job, go to
Hmm.
meetings, pay your sober living, you have to be responsible. You
Right.
can't even say those things anymore because this has all gone out the window.
So what they've all lost is the or else, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, for
That's
the
the part
most
that's
part,
gone.
what are you gonna do?
You can still make good recommendations. You need to do this, you need to do that, but
Right.
you know, when I do interventions, I have to tell people, you know, tell families that like the answer we have to have is to the question, well, what if I don't? Right? I mean, that's like when you count to 3 with your kids when they're young and it's like, don't
And
make
that's
me get to 3. And I mean, in the back of your mind, it's like, well, I don't have anything after 3, so please don't let me get to 3. And you know, that's what parents are losing is
right,
whatever comes after 3 because it no longer exists.
right,
And so here you've got, you know, people who up until the COVID experience had, you know, another tool in the toolbox, which was to step in and change the household or the family dynamic and say, you know, we're not going to participate in this anymore. And if you're going to continue this way, then we can't have you do it in our home. That's gone right now.
right.
You know, and so I think it's going to push people to look at alternatives, you know, to try to find a way to coexist with an active addict or alcoholic, which is hard.
And that sounds great, right? Unless you don't know how to do it. Because we have a lot of families that haven't done that work yet.
Hmm.
And now they're all pushed together in the same house.
Right. Well, that's the trick is that, you know, I know you do it. I do it. A lot of family work, which is getting people used to communicating in a different way, helping them understand addiction, recovery, their role in it, what their loved one needs to do, what they need to do, what they can do, what they can't do. I mean, these are all things that, you know, they take time. You know,
Right,
you get stuck in a certain way of doing things for so many years, and then all of a sudden you have to face addiction in your home. Your loved one no longer responds to reason. Your words don't hold any weight. They don't listen to common sense. You can't have a rational conversation with them. I mean, that's a crazy place to live without
right,
the right support or guidance, or without changing part of yourself and learning how to approach it differently. That can be pretty insane, especially if you don't have a guide.
right. And I feel impossible. And then, people with mental health issues too. I think that
Mhm.
a lot of our kids have either developed or had an underlying mental health issue before the drugs.
Mhm.
And those things are going untreated too because they can't get in to see the doctor. They can't get in to see the psychiatrist. And they sometimes can't get in to see the therapist unless the therapist is doing telephone or Zoom meetings.
Right.
So this is This is tough. And there, I don't know what the answers are because, like you said, we've never gone through this before. I mean,
Well, it's adjusting. I
yeah,
mean, I think about it like this. There was, I'm sure you've used Uber before.
sure.
Okay. Have you used a taxi before?
From New York.
Do you still use taxis?
I never use a taxi
How come?
because I could just pick up the app and order
Because
Lyft or
Uber
Uber. Yeah,
adapted to a changing landscape.
right.
Taxis did not. Okay. So Ubers utilized a tool that we all have, a convenient tool, and decided that it would be easier to give people that access and to do ride sharing than taxis. It's more
Mm,
cost effective. It creates jobs. They adapted. The taxi companies had the opportunity to do something similar with apps, and they never changed, right?
mhm,
So that you had this old model, which was convenient at the time, but didn't keep up with the times, right? And so they didn't change, which means that they got really pushed out by Uber, and they got really upset when Uber came in. They like tried to fight them and sue them and, corner them in certain cities. Oh, you can't use the airport, you can't do this. They were just trying to hold on to their market share. And it's because they did not adapt that they are now almost obsolete, right?
yeah.
Like, who says I'm going to get a taxi?
No, it's true. It's just they had time to do that. You
But
know what
they
I mean?
didn't do it.
And no, and they didn't do it. But I mean, even Uber had time, the taxi companies had time. Whether they did it or not is one thing. But here we all are. This was like, here we are all together in the same house. Adapt right now.
Well, there's been time. There's been time for years, and I think people have been coming up with alternative ways to address something, but they're just not being heard because we didn't have to change. Now we're
Yeah,
being
yeah,
forced to accept alternatives.
yeah. I see your
And
point.
so, I think that the people who have been adapting in the background and coming up with different ways to address addiction, you've got the old only way, which is it's the taxi company. You know
Right.
what I mean? And yeah, they had plenty of time to make adjustments, but it was working for them. And so, what I'm talking about when I say taxi companies, I'm talking about the treatment industry. It's been the same forever. 28 days, 30 days, 60 days. It's all based on what insurance will and won't pay. The insurance companies and the amount of time that you get in treatment has absolutely nothing to do with how long it takes to get well.
Yeah,
It's just
it.
it's
Yeah.
an arbitrary timeline. It means nothing. 30 days in treatment does not accomplish anything. It never has, other than a pause, right? Pause and access to services. But 30 days does not equate a
When did it
treatment
start being 30
approach.
days? Because I had family members that were in treatment, a while ago,
Mhm.
and it wasn't 30 days.
28 days,
No,
14
it
days.
was much longer. It was much
Yeah,
longer.
90 days. I
Yeah.
mean, the 30-day model, my understanding was it was based on like military leave.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
And that, beyond that, it's just become an adopted amount of time that an insurance company would be willing to pay for. And
Mhm.
so the treatment programs built their model around what insurance companies would pay for, not what actually helps the person.
Yeah,
If it was what actually helps the person, you need to be here as long as it takes to address the
right.
issue. Like, imagine going to the hospital, right? And, it would take you 3 to 6 weeks to truly address the issue of being in the hospital, getting the surgery, going to physical rehab, and doing all the things that are necessary so you can walk back into your house after whatever injury you received.
Oh, well, they
However,
do that. They do that with, I mean, they don't do it as severely, I don't think, as with addiction, but they
mhm,
do that because I remember having my oldest child and having 3 days in the hospital and my youngest child and having 24 hours.
well, that's what I'm saying. So, I
Yeah.
mean, if you take addiction out of the equation, it's like imagine going to the hospital and, the thing that they need to address could take you like 6 weeks.
Mhm.
And one person goes in and gets it and they stay for 6 weeks and they walk back into their house like, whew, glad that's over. But another hospital bases their stay, or the insurance company says, well, you only really need like 3 or 4. And then they go home and they continue to struggle with it and maybe re-injure themselves or something like that. Like, that's what addiction is. That's what the treatment industry is doing. And so when I say the treatment industries are like the taxis, all these other approaches, whether it's PHP, IOP, working with people from home, using MAT, mixing the 12 steps and MAT together. I don't really care what it is. And I've said this before, I don't care what type of recovery you use, just wash your hands, like just doesn't matter. Just get well. that, this lockdown here is forcing everybody's hand.
I hope so.
Well, I mean, even if it's not, it's forcing people to reconsider. It's
Yeah,
forcing the
I just
consumer to
yeah.
reconsider what access to services looks like and stuff like that.
I mean, it just seems like even from a cost perspective, right? If you step back, there are so many things that are more that the cost benefit would make sense. Like it would doesn't really make sense to release somebody too soon because they will keep coming back, and the insurance company will have to keep paying, right? So I just don't get. I've never been able to quite figure this out because I do think that it's driven by the insurance companies because
Mhm.
it's not driven by the treatment industry. If it was driven by the treatment industry, I would understand it because you want people to come back. And I'm not saying that they want people to come back,
As a business
but
model, it
as
would
a
be silly
business
not
model,
to.
you would
Yeah.
want people to come back. But as an insurer, you don't want people to come back. You want
Right.
people to get well in in the shortest amount of time possible, but you do want them to get well so they don't have to do this for 3 years, or 5 years, or for however long it takes. So
I'm
I don't
wondering if in the crudest way possible, if they're just not, and again, I'm not projecting this on any insurance company. If you're listening and you work for an insurance company, don't get mad. But um, probably 10 years ago, I went to Senator Tolman's Heroin and Oxycontin Commission. I don't know if you remember that.
Mhm,
And I went there and I testified to the commission at the State House. And the insurance companies were all there explaining why they do what they do, answering that very question that you just asked.
mhm.
And the answer was as confusing as the question. It just there was no really good answer other than it costs less to pay for this than it does to pay for that.
I'm sure it
And
it did at one point, but I wonder if it still does.
well,
You
this
know
is
what I
where it
mean?
gets this is where it gets crude. Is that the mortality rate for individuals struggling with the substance use issue, that it's high,
Yeah,
meaning that they tend to die, right? Which means that the
yes,
people they have to pay for tend to die off if they don't actually pay for the whole treatment. That's crude. That's messed up. But as a business model, some guy in the back crunching numbers at an insurance
right.
company, you're just a number. And if the numbers decline, we have to pay less. And so I'm not saying that that's what they do. I'm just saying I have to speculate and I
Well, I'm
have
sure
to
that's what it
consider,
is.
like, is
Yeah,
there just a business machine in the background crunching numbers that doesn't take into consideration this illness? And are these numbers just being weighed out? Like when let's say when there's a recall, right, on a vehicle, the company, the vehicle company has to consider whether it would cost less to do the recall or just pay the lawsuits for the people that die.
right.
And whichever one costs less is the one that they'll do. And insurance companies probably weigh these things out the same way, is that it would cost us less to just keep throwing 3 days of detox and an outpatient at them until they either die or get well than it would for us to pay for full lengths of treatment and actually invest in each individual and address their addiction issues.
How do we allow this to keep going, though? I just don't understand it.
Privatized insurance companies. It's
Yeah,
capitalism at its best. I mean, how can you live in a country where insurance companies are a private industry built on capitalism and then wonder why they're taking advantage of us, the consumers? That's insanity. So we're dependent on them. In my opinion, the only way that you can eliminate that, and it sucks because it costs money, is to pay for your own treatment plan, to organize, create, and structure your own treatment plan based on what you think is necessary to address the issue.
yeah.
Otherwise, it's out of your hands. You're putting it in the hands of people who don't know you, don't care about you, and aren't interested in your long-term results. That's it. And so, if I go to the hospital and my insurance company is only going to pay for part of my issue, do I just go home and get mad that they wouldn't pay? No, I may have to come out of pocket, borrow money, and find some other way to go to physical therapy and do all the other things necessary so that I don't have a lifelong issue. But that's on me. I'm capable of rational thought. I'm a reasonable individual. And so right now, I would do everything possible. Somebody that's struggling
Compromise.
with
Yeah,
addiction
yeah,
would go and just be like, oh, well, they told me that's all I need. And then if they mess up, blame the hospital. That's the
right,
hospital's fault. I'll leave them a bad review. It's not the hospital's fault. They can't just take it on for themselves because they're dependent on the insurance company
right.
to pay their bills. Again, outlining a huge industrial machine that you're up against when you're making that call. If you're a parent and you're on the internet looking through the Google and
Mm,
you're like, I need drug treatment, and the first 10 things that pop up probably paid to pop up. You know what I mean? And all the ones that say we take your insurance. Okay. You call the program. You think the program's going to tell you they're not a good program? Probably not. They're going to say we're
right,
the best program.
right,
And you're going to call your insurance company and you're going to say, well, what do they cover? And they're going to say, oh, well, we cover this 30 days. And in your mind, you're going to be like, wow, 30 days, that's a long time. But it's an arbitrary number, doesn't mean
right,
anything. And you
right,
get no guaranteed results after 30 days. And, I think that's a really confusing place for a family to be, especially if they're just jumping into this without having a you or a me or a support group that they can lean on and say, hey, this is what I found.
right.
And then they can get feedback and somebody can be like, don't do that. Um, you know, go here or go there, or don't take that path, or try not to get frustrated at these people because it's not their fault. And
Yeah, it's really frustrating and so disturbing. And because this is all during this whole pandemic, this still continues.
I know.
And, it's not like one is any worse or, any better or one life isn't as important as the other life. But I can't help thinking, and I know that, people don't want to hear this, that every day that we watch the death toll tick up on these, and they're large numbers
Oh
now.
yeah.
We watch this. I've been waking up for every day for years, not knowing who was going to be alive and who was going to be dead that I knew
Hmm.
arbitrarily. It feels like sometimes, right?
Right.
And somebody relapse and you wake up and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe they're gone. And 200 a day, that we're losing. So I this is something that parents and that people that love other people that unfortunately are still in the throes of addiction have been feeling this feeling for a long time
Hmm.
without really anything we can do about it very often.
So one of the things that I notice, because I go to a lot of family support groups, and I'm actually supposed to be speaking on some family support groups this month, and virtually, which is
Hmm.
how everybody's doing it. But I know that as an addict, when I was out there and I was going to meetings, half of it was the fellowship. It was I had been isolated as an addict, meaning that I sat in my mother's attic or in the basement, or I sat in my apartment or wherever it was, and I just kind of did drugs and hid from the world. If I went to work, it was just a means to an end. If I went out of the house, it was because I had to go hustle and do something. But my goal was always just to come back and chill out. Right?
Hmm.
That was just me. It's the type of person I am. And when I started to get well, I needed the groups. I needed the people. I needed to feel normal.
Yeah.
And I think people, I guess, have gotten really used to going to these places, leaving their house and going to these places, leaving the chaos, right? Leaving my mother's house, leaving my, my shitty apartment, and going to these meetings and seeing other people and getting a taste of normalcy, rubbing elbows, drinking coffee, meeting a speaker, setting up chairs, making the coffee. Like those
Right.
are the things that an addict or an alcoholic new in recovery is going to meetings to do. And that's what gets them involved, sponsoring someone, sitting down and reading out of a book, having it being read to them. And, there's an adaptation that needs to take place for addicts and alcoholics right now, which is to adapt to this new form of meetings. You don't have that same social interaction. I mean, you got to make your own coffee. If you live in chaos, you've just got to find a place within that chaos to get on your phone and jump into a meeting. I'm imagining that the same could be said for parents and families, is that part of the draw of going to those support groups was finally getting a couple hours out of the house, out of the chaos, getting a hug from another parent or
Right.
family member.
Somebody that gets you. Yeah.
Right, sitting in a room and feeling the overwhelming energy of 10, 20, 30, 40, or even 50 people sitting in a room, and realizing that your problems are common, that
Right.
you're not alone. And I'm not saying that having your screen filled up with little people isn't similar, but it can't be the same. And so there's an adjustment.
Right.
And I'm curious to know, and I mean, I can't speak for it because I've never done it and this is all new, but I'm curious to know as we go along how people are making that adjustment, if it is the same, and if this is the new normal for months. um, is it helping?
Yeah,
Is there more we can do?
I think it's better than nothing, but I think that maybe this will be a new added bonus to,
Mm,
maybe there'll be more of these meetings so that you can find a meeting any time of the day or if you don't want to leave the house. But I still think that lack of that connection, that touching somebody else or sitting next to somebody else,
hmm
it it's tough to do without.
hmm Having somebody come up to you after the meeting, put their hand on your back,
Right.
tell you it's gonna be okay, like that.
Yeah. The
That
value
doesn't
of a hug.
exist.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, this is like this is like that. It's not the same.
hmm Even
It's not the
Caesar's
same.
getting all excited. He's
I know.
like,
I saw that. I'm
yeah,
watching him.
jumping
He's
around back
feeling a
there.
little isolated.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I have little Pomeranians too. I'm sure that you'll hear them go off at some point because they like barking at the wind. But recently, I've been taking him out, putting him on the floor, and getting them used to each other. And so now one of the Pomeranians, Tegan, I put him on the floor, and she like runs and plays with him, and like smashes her paws on the floor next to him. And he's like, I mean, the first couple times you should have seen his face, but now he just runs around. He thinks he's a dog. Yeah, pretty
That'll
funny.
be at the end of this. The bearded dragon will think he's a dog.
Yeah, it's pretty close. Pretty close. It's all dogs in this house. I mean, I think that this is a good. It's a good opportunity. I hate to use that word because so many people are being just ravaged by this
Yeah.
illness, but like this time socially is a good opportunity for us to consider adjustments. And it's forced me and my hand in my business to pursue other avenues to work with families and
Yeah.
to create new programs and web-based distance learning options for students. And I'm the schools are adjusting. Everybody's adjusting in their own
Yeah.
way. Businesses, it's like Darwinism here, like the fittest will survive,
Yeah.
the most willing to adapt, you will survive, because there's still people, there's still need, there's still services, there's still opportunity, but you just have to adjust to make it work.
And we
And
have to do that because this is not going to go away overnight.
well, that's
It's not going to be like April 30th and everything's turned back on like the lights. It's not going to work like
again
that.
arbitrary numbers, just like the
Right.
insurance companies. They say May 4th, and everyone's like, oh, I can't wait till May 4th. I'm like, for what? What do you think? It's going away? It's
Right.
not. It's like that's the most recent temporary lockdown timeline. I mean, you need to brace yourself with the fact that this is a national issue, that across the country people are still getting sick. We still don't have a way to treat it, and even when we find a way to treat it, it's going to take time to make sure that people have access to services. So I know there's a lot of fear and concern around this. Our focus is addiction and families, and this just adds a layer of frustration and confusion when trying to deal with that. But we still need to sort through this, and we still need to weed through this and realize that addiction will transcend all of this. It's been around for years. It will be around after this. It's just making it harder for us to address it. But this addiction is still the issue. That's still killing people. That is still killing souls. That is still killing families. And COVID-19 or not, we still need to find a healthy way to address it and make sure that people are not isolating, and they're reaching out for services, and they're talking to people like you and me,
Right.
listening to podcasts like this, and getting access to services. And so can they go on, like if someone's listening right now and they're looking for a meeting, can they go on to the Magnolia Facebook group?
We've been
And
doing twice a week. We've been doing
okay,
Thursday and Sunday nights.
okay,
And then twice a month on a Wednesday afternoon, I do a meeting with Kristen Young from the Heron Foundation
oh
on our
great,
closed pages. So we have that going on inside the closed pages. And the closed pages are great because you can talk and it's just like a meeting. I mean, there's going to be
right,
other people there, but those people are all in that group because they have going through the same thing.
hmm
So it's like being in a giant closed meeting. And so that's been good. And I've worked with as you do too. I work with people across the country.
Hmm.
So I was already using Zoom. Probably
Right.
more than half my clients are in places outside of Massachusetts. So I
I've
was
worked
still
with
doing
families I've never even met before.
right. So this is kind of what I do anyhow. It's just now this is all I do. I kind of
Right.
miss sitting down with somebody, but yeah, so they can still go on to Magnolia and go to the family meetings. And then there's Wicked Sober and Magnolia We Do Recover are the two pages that I have that I run for people that are in recovery.
Okay.
And I'm always putting out uh, all kinds of activities and God, there's everything now. There's yoga, there's meditation, there's no end to the stuff and the meetings. And there's
Hmm.
just every kind of meeting too. There's refuge recovery, there's AA, NA, there's everything out there right now, online.
And there's no longer an excuse.
There really isn't. And, I was just having this conversation with somebody before we got on who's just so depressed. She can't seem to like just start.
Hmm.
So, I gave her the three things to do. And one of those was just on any meeting, just start,
Hmm.
just watch. Don't even have to say anything. Just get on there
Hmm.
and you can turn your camera off. You can mute yourself and you can just be like a fly on the wall. You
Right.
don't even have to do anything, but just listen to other people and know you're not alone. And you can do that with any of those meetings, with the
Right.
family meetings, with the recovery meetings. You don't have to be one of those little people in a box.
Mm-mm.
So,
No.
I mean, I just
No
it's better.
excuses.
Right. It's almost better. And I think, some of these, this is really a nice entry into going to a meeting, either a family meeting or any kind of meeting, if you were afraid to go before, or you didn't want to go before, you didn't want anybody to see you going, or
Mm.
whatever your reason was. You can do these things anonymously, really anonymously,
Right.
until you're ready to go, because until we're able to go.
Hmm.
I had a young guy the other day that contacted me out of jail for like 3 days right before everything closed down
Hmm.
without any ID.
Wait, what?
No ID. So he doesn't have didn't have like a license, didn't have any
Oh.
kind of ID, no birth certificate. He ordered his birth certificate. He's waiting for that to come. It's taking longer, right?
Oh yeah.
He keeps making an appointment with motor vehicle and it keeps getting canceled, right?
Right.
And he doesn't have ID, so he can't even go to like one of the grocery stores, which you can get a job at a grocery store. Just had a girl do that the other day,
Hmm.
but he couldn't even do that.
Wow. I mean, it's like I said, it's tough to have to build during this period of time. You get kids that are trying
Absolutely.
to build a life, and it seems pretty daunting and pretty hopeless. Like if you didn't already have a job before this, ugh,
Well,
you
I think
know?
if you just got out of jail and you didn't have any ID before this, but you know what? He's still pushing.
Hmm.
He's doing a little bit here and a little bit there every time he gets the opportunity. He still keeps trying to get his ID straightened out. And I mean, I think too, at the end of this, aren't we all going to say, "Holy, I got through that," you know? And that just makes me realize that there's a lot I can get through if I got through this, because this
Well, it
is
might put some things into perspective. I mean, as Mr. Silver Lining, I have to say that, again, I feel terrible about how this is impacting certain families. And I saw
Mhm.
I saw a post this morning, and I really liked it. It said, "We're all in the same boat, but we're not all weathering the same storm,"
That's the
and
truth, right?
outlined the various storms. For some people, this is just a break. Just a break from the rat race, and a little calm down. And yeah, sure, it might be irritating to be around certain family members or to not be able to go out of the house, but it's just mildly inconvenient, and that's one boat. And then you get other people who are going through things already, and this is just another layer of chaos and stress and anxiety. And then people who are being directly impacted by this and
Right,
losing family members and being
right.
displaced and, financially going through extreme financial hardships. And so, yeah, we're all in the same boat. We're not all going through the same storm. And so, this thing, I think, is going to put a lot of perspective on, you know, people, humanity, like getting us used to reconnecting and realizing there's other people out there. And I have to hope that on the other side of this there will be um some shift, some new result, as far as access to services, redefining treatment, you know, maybe shifting their perspective on what an outcome is. An outcome isn't successful completion of time in a program. That's a prison sentence.
Right.
An outcome is some sort of personal recovery process that's going to lead you to a better quality life. That's an outcome without
And
the arbitrary timelines that insurance
right, and that
dictates.
goes for families too,
It
right?
does. It
I know.
definitely does.
Yeah. Because yeah, we're all kind of, but I can only I keep hoping that we'll emerge from this a
Hmm.
better humanity, better, kinder, gentler people.
Right.
I hope, and more understanding of everything,
Hmm.
of anybody's struggle, of anybody's hardships, you know? I hope.
So let's. So how about this? Let's come up with top 3 things that a family should be doing right now if they have an active addict in their life. Top 3. So
Uh,
what's the first one that comes to your mind?
Gratitude?
Have gratitude
Yeah,
that they're still alive
right,
and that
and
you
that you
have the
have the
ability to help
opportunity
them.
for an right,
Okay.
right,
So have gratitude.
yeah.
Number 2,
Understanding
have understanding.
that this is not easy for anybody and that
Hmm.
everybody is kind of struggling in their own way.
Caesar
Wow.
liked that one. Did you
I
see
know,
that?
I
He just
saw that,
almost
he
jumped
jumped
out
for
of the
joy.
cage. And then how about education? Right? Everybody's taking this time right now to learn new things. People
Absolutely.
are taking this time to learn a language, read a book, binge a Netflix show. You've got time, right? So
Learn about addiction if you don't already
that's
know.
what I'm saying.
I
So
mean,
you've
there's
got
so many
gratitude
things. Yeah.
and understanding, and educate yourself. Go to meetings, read a book, read If You Love Me, A Mother's Journey Through a Daughter's Addiction, read Loving Lions, read any other book out there, but start with those 2,
Of course.
of course. Um, and, you know, go to a support group, a virtual support group, listen, call someone, join Magnolia New Beginnings, whatever it might be,
Yeah, connect.
educate.
There's other ways to connect, like you said. I mean,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be the old taxi cab way.
So I'm going to list these. If you're watching, I'm going to put them up on the screen. Have gratitude, gain understanding, and educate yourself.
I think that if people could do those 3 things during this time, I'm trying to do those things. I am.
Same.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're not, you're probably still in your underwear in bed complaining that you don't want to get out of bed. Yeah,
Not
I mean,
my
I'm
under
wearing shorts. I'm not going to say, yeah, I have a hoodie on. But, you know, I mean, if you're not up trying to do something with this time, you know, I think you're wasting it.
I know. So every time I feel sorry for myself, I look around and I'm like, "Ah, shut up, Maureen.
Yeah,
It's
right.
just not so bad."
Yeah. I can't really complain. I really
No.
can't. Luckily, you know, I have a few different jobs. So in addition to my addiction industry business that I'm trying to manage, I do podcasts, and so I'm still recording and producing and editing podcasts every day. So plenty
Yeah.
of stuff to keep me busy. But again, for those that are listening, you know, you're probably weathering a storm that nobody else understands, or it feels like nobody else understands. But you know, we understand that it's difficult, but that since there's only so much that you can do right now, having gratitude that your loved one is still alive, great place to start. Having some understanding of what it's going to take for them to get well and what they're going through right now is 2. And then the last is educate. Read a book, learn something, take a class, go to a support group, watch a movie on addiction, something. Gain a better understanding through education of what it's going to take when the time comes for you to take action.
Yeah, because I think we can be sympathetic to somebody else's, plight, but until we really have that, we educate ourselves and we really understand what somebody's going through, it's hard to have empathy,
Of course.
So, and I think that that's key really is into like just help, just understanding what someone's going through
Well,
is
didn't we just have a guest on and his hashtag was walk a mile?
yes,
Right?
we
You
did.
know, and I like that because that's what it is. I mean,
Yeah,
we talk all the time about like, yeah, you can understand the concept of addiction, but all you're looking at is me using drugs. You don't understand my why. You don't know how I feel about me. You don't know how painful being sober is. Stop telling me to be sober. You know what I
right.
mean? You're telling me to do the one thing I can't do, and then you're telling me if I don't do it, you're going to punish me.
Yeah, I think just acknowledging that you don't understand what somebody else is going through,
Mm-hmm.
because, and especially with this is uncharted territory for everybody, but everybody goes through this differently.
Mm-hmm.
No one knows what someone else feels,
Right.
so
Well, this has been fun, in the sense that we got to finally connect and
Your
actually
your
talk to another human being,
your
even though it's
barometer for
electronic.
fun is really getting low, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah. This has been fun. Well, no, I mean, I love podcasting and I love talking to you, and I'm sitting in my house, watching recorded video all day long. So it's nice
Yeah.
to actually interact with a human being. And, but hopefully our listeners got something out of this. We have a bunch of good episodes coming up. I'm going to put this one out first.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's a great
referencing
idea.
future episodes when I said hashtag walk a mile. You'll hear that soon.
Yeah.
But stay tuned for future episodes. We got a couple of good guests coming up.
And
If
people should feel
you,
free to reach out to me and you, I'm sure, if they're
yes.
struggling and they want some direction, or they want to know about meetings, or they want
Mhm.
for anything, because I'm more than happy. I have plenty of time on my hands.
Well, why don't you tell them? Why don't you tell everybody how to get in touch with you?
You can get me on maureencavanaugh.net. All my information is on there. So
Bam,
yeah, I mean
nice and easy, right?
my my phone number.
Yes.
This phone right here that's by me all the time is on there. So
Yep.
I'm more than happy to help anybody that needs help or direction right now.
Mhm.
I mean,
And
always, but
all of my contact information can be found at baystaterecovery.com, or you could literally just Google Mike Wilson Bay State, and
right.
everything you need to know will pop up.
Yeah, there's no hiding between the
No,
two
no,
of
no,
us.
no.
Yeah. And if you can't find me, if you can't find him, I'll find him for you.
Right. You can find one of us, or it'll be in the show notes. All of our stuff. If you're on Facebook, follow Collateral Damage. You'll get updates on new episodes. If you want to watch these, you can go onto YouTube. Type
How
in
many
Collateral
episodes are
Damage.
out now?
I don't know.
It's a
30
lot.
something,
Yeah, I think
34,
so. I think
35.
34 I saw.
Yep. And
Wow. How did
so if
that
you want to
happen?
watch them, go to YouTube, type in Collateral Damage, hit subscribe, hit notifications. It will tell you when we put up a new episode. If you have something to say about it, leave a comment. Give us a review on iTunes if you're feeling, like you want to. We would love it.
But only if you like us, because I'm feeling
Yeah.
particularly delicate right now with all this going
Yeah, I
on.
mean, 5-star reviews only, if you don't mind. 4 or 5. Keep the
No.
ones to yourself. Send us a private email. We'll fix whatever
Yes.
it is. Um, and then, as always, you can find Maureen's book on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I assume that there's some sort of an ebook that they can download as well.
Yeah, there's Kindle and
Kindle,
Audible
audiobook.
and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm
And
everywhere.
then Loving Lions is also available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Kindle, ebook. I didn't do my audio one yet. I didn't like my voice, so I just didn't do it.
Oh, you don't want to listen to my whining voice for 5.5 hours?
I listen. The biggest mistake was that I recorded it, and then the guy sent it to me for review, and I was like, nope.
Oh, you should have
if
just put it out.
if
Yeah.
he was only half of the thing, so he just
Yeah.
did the recording, and he's like, I want you to do the rest, and I was like, okay, cool, because that's what I do, that stuff.
Yeah.
But doing it for your own voice, I was like, I just
Oh,
forget
yeah.
it. I can see it. I'm looking at the file on my computer right now, and I don't want to open it, so
No,
I won't.
no,
So
fortunately,
buy the book.
yeah. No,
Read
that's a
it for
great
yourself.
book. It's a great book.
Yeah.
I get most of my material from stealing your stuff. So
It's funny. I get families that come in and they bring in the book, and it's got like little sticky notes,
isn't that
and
great?
there's like highlighter and stuff. Like, well, on this page you said that. I'm like, I did. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I remember that.
You know what? The best compliment I got was a girl that read it in jail. And
Oh
she
wow.
decided when she came out, she had no idea. Well, she must have had some idea, but she didn't know what she had done to her family. And she
Mm.
reconnected with her mother, and she got help, and she's still sober. And
Well,
that's
your book
probably
is a great insight into, what parents are doing in the background when the kids
yeah,
are off. I mean, I like how you didn't really, in your book, you didn't really talk about her addiction. I mean, you talked about your experience with her addiction, which is true
yeah,
to
it
the
was
name of
always
the book,
yeah,
but like you didn't speculate or allude to anything. It was just what you were going through while she was off. Like there's another whole book that you won't read,
right,
that you didn't write about and couldn't write about. And
right,
I did the same
yeah,
in the beginning of mine, which is just my side. I
right,
talked about what I thought my parents were going through, but they have to write their own book.
right.
And so, I think there's
And
two
I
sides.
I wrote that book in the middle of it too.
I
So it
know.
was, and you can like, I think, feel that
I
when
didn't
you're
have the
reading it.
luxury of doing that.
No, well, yeah,
Who
that might
writes
have
a
been a whole
book while
different
they're
book.
active? Yeah. Who writes their recovery book while they're actively using it?
Yeah, that wouldn't have worked at
Yeah.
all. But
I do have a book of poetry, addiction poetry, that I wrote while I was active and while I was trying to get into early
you
recovery.
need to publish that.
And I have it. It's all done. I just don't know what to do with it. I can't get past like writing a book is one form of art, but putting poetry out is different. It feels different. It's harder. I don't know why.
You think so?
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah, I don't know.
So,
I thought even the book was hard.
yeah. Well, I mean,
Yeah, you're opening
imagine
you're opening like
your
here.
soul comes out in poetry.
Look at
Yeah.
everything.
Well, a book is just facts. These things happened, and this was
Yeah.
my experience. But poetry, I think, is a little bit more intimate. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
There's something else, more expressive art, and so I'm just battling through that, but it'll come out eventually.
I hope so.
All right. Well,
All
then,
right, my friend.
with that, we'll let our listeners go and play off and trail into some amazing podcast exit music, and have them jump on for a future episode.
There we go.